It's that time of day. It's that time of month. It's the same Matt time. It's the same Matt channel, as our co-host Glenn Gormley says at the end of every episode. Now, we're going to say at the beginning of every episode. It's another episode of the MatStats Show, episode 49, along with Kevin Hazard and Glenn Gormley. I'm Jason Bryant, where we dive in to the stats beneath the sport of wrestling, underneath the res light, if you will, or whichever mat surface you prefer. It's one of those things that we dive in, we get to the meat and potatoes of the matter, how the sausage is made, as Glenn likes to call it. It's the money ball of wrestling. Been a while. College wrestling season's here. We were talking before the show as Glenn dealt with some OLD issues with his computer there. We got through it. We figured it out. But we had a good kickoff to the season. We're coming off of Iowa State on ESPN. We had the National Duels Invitational. We've got Vegas coming up as the time we record this in early December. So it's I always joke when we're in March, I'm walking around singing Christmas songs. Well, it is the Christmas season, and it is the most wonderful time of the year. And if you cut out on the show, I understand why. Gentlemen, we start with you, Mr. Gormley. How have you been with old Matt Stattery and the SEC football type of things that are quite a bit in the news lately?
Yes, that guy that's now at Baton Rouge has been the drama queen that he is.
That's basically, you just summed up what SportsCenter could have been for the last month with just that statement. So we can end the show right here, folks. Thanks for coming to Matt. Anyway. Yeah, Mr. Kiffin, just show me the money, show me the money, show me the money. Did he name his dog Oxford after naming his kid Knox? Did he not make that same mistake with any other people that he added to the family is what I was wondering.
Yeah, who knows? The guy, I'm not a fan of his.
Kevin Hazard, your take.
I'm also not a fan, but I do wonder whether they told him they weren't going to let him coach in the playoffs.
Yeah,
that who knows? That's such a cutthroat kind of a thing.
We've
they
broached
made
it on the show
out
before.
Of the coach who was going to California, but he's not a nice person, I don't think.
Yeah, we've broached the issue of the NCAA calendar before, and a lot of the things I'm seeing on socials, which is basically where news kind of emits itself from now, whether it be on X, Blue Sky, Facebook, whatever. I don't do the TikTok or the Snapchats. I ain't nobody got time for that. The thing is like, it's the NCAA calendar, and then you're looking at, coach, they want to put guardrails on the athletes announcing they're leaving, but they don't do it on coaches. I get that, but the same. What I don't understand of the calendar, like a coach can get fired at any point. You're not going to tell these independent outlets or organizations, businesses is what they are, when they can and can't fire their personnel. So that's one thing. It's like, no, you can't, you're not allowed to fire a coach midway through the season. Okay, Yeah, that's really going to work. So, like, if Penn State doesn't want to fire James Franklin, okay, you're going to let them, they're going to lame duck through that season. If they're going to lame duck anyway, but then we got the Brian Kelly payouts, the James Franklin buyouts that are they're just nuts. Just so much money going through a sport to really, where's the ROI on that? That's what I want to know. Meanwhile, we got some positivity on the wrestling side with the National Duels Invitational, of course, Paycom sponsoring that event down in Tulsa. Fantastic event. Teams came away with some big checks and some bonus checks too. The first day, guys, they did a $10,000 per round fastest average takedown. Now, for stats nerds, it takes the first 5 fastest takedowns and average the time. So the impetus there was to get action going early. You didn't want 0-0 first periods. You're like, all right, let's go out there. Each guy goes out and gets a takedown. So it's like the first takedown of the match. So you had to get 5. So you couldn't be, lose a match 9 matches to 1 and have a 13-second takedown and take home $10,000. You had to have at least 5. And they averaged them out. And once the team hit 5, we put it up on the video board there at the BOK Center in Tulsa. And, Ohio State took home 2 extra checks. Illinois took home 1. Virginia Tech took home 1, in addition to what they got for the prize money for making day 2. And, pretty cool concept, and teams were starting to get behind it too. It's, something new. We weren't sure how it was going to work. It's spaghetti you throw to the wall, see if it works. I think that's one that's going to stick with that event. And I'll say this, yes, I was paid to be there as one of the public address announcers. I was there with A.L. Hazlip, working on the microphone there. And the one thing I found about it is that this, I'm a dual meet guy, have been since the Virginia Duels when I first attended in 1995. There is no reason this event cannot be a destination event. Or if it's something close, like Frank Popolizio's Collegiate Duels that are in Nashville, that can be a destination event. The Virginia Duels, of course, I want that to be a destination event because we've got 48 high schools, a large small college or American college division. There's no reason we can only have one or two destination events because I believe we have more than the same 18,000 wrestling fans. So just because you can't get tickets to nationals doesn't mean you can't go to something else. Like Vegas. Vegas is going to be a great wrestling event this coming weekend. Not super well attended, despite having, I think I looked at one of the Flow rankings this week. At just one weight class, they had 14 ranked guys. Like, that's half the field. So, if you've got a tournament with half the field as ranked, why would you not consider going to that? Because, everybody clamors for Vegas. Oh, I'll put in Vegas. Tickets are cheap. Show up. Only 1.5 tournaments draw fans. So I like to think that, Tulsa being what it is with it, travel's going to be what it is. I thought they did a great job. I definitely think Tulsa was much more event friendly, if that's a way to say it, than they did when they hosted the Nationals in 2023. It felt like the area around the arena, while there weren't, there was 3 times more fans 2.5 times more fans at the NCAAs a couple years ago, but like the arena area around it was equipped. There wasn't as much construction. I got to see a little bit more of Tulsa, like, on those little scooters, which Mark McLaughlin say keep him in business. You never find yourself any more irresponsible as an adult as when you're riding around on a Lime scooter. So I thought Tulsa did a great job, and Matt Serber with his tournament staff did a great job. Detrick Baumgartner at does a Baumberger, I believe, does a great job of the production stuff. So I thought from a behind the scenes, under the hood type of situation, it was great. So to the point is like that can be a destination event. Like, what's wrong? I mean, it was warm. I mean, it's early mid-November. Didn't have the ice storms or anything like that can sometimes torment Oklahoma. But as I say that, as I have 6 inches of snow that came down, and Iowa's digging out under 18 or something. So I was a fan of the event. We can talk more about those types of statistical things later on. I realize I'm getting off topic before we even start our episode, but gentlemen, the dual meet has always been a contentious part of wrestling, and whether, I'm not going to boil this into a discussion about should or shouldn't we, but, it's the dual meet that introduced a lot of people to the sport. It introduced me to the sport. It was one of those things you can sit down, you can follow a team a lot easier in a lot of ways, and the dual meet advancement concept is fun for fans. When you're wrestling, you don't sit there and have a 25-pounder and then wait 2 hours for your heavyweight to wrestle, and then, you're dialed in on a mat. You can leave between sessions, come back. It was just generally, dual meet events and tournaments are really very fan-friendly.
I agree. And you talk about the national duels, but then you had the Iowa State on ESPN. Probably pulled, I think it probably pulled good numbers, and 4 upsets. The rankings kind of went out the window. I mean, a lot of the higher ranked guys won, but a lot of the lower guys ranked wins on both sides.
Well, you also said, and then speaking of upsets, South Dakota State over Minnesota with I think 4 or 5 upsets. Yikes! This week in the NWCA Coaches Poll, South Dakota State ranked number 8 in the nation. It's highest as a Division I school. They've been a D1 school in wrestling for looks like coming up, I think this is the 2021st year, because Northern Colorado, North Dakota State, South Dakota State all reclassified in that same, I think it was 0405, I think they were in that range, 03, 04, 04, 05 in that range. That's where we're at. But anyway, we've got a dive into divisional stuff as we kind of segue that, Glenn. We're going to head on up, and we want you to channel your inner Steve Perry, your inner Joel Walsh, and whoever the new guy is who's been in Journey for about 20 years at this point. So we don't want you to stop believing. Don't stop believing. One of the great crowd anthems of all time. Yeah. That has been this is probably one of the musical themes that I actually can get behind, Glenn. So,
well, I'm glad you can get behind it. Okay.
Yes, because, yeah.
This episode, guys, thanks for the introduction there, Jason. This episode, we're going to deal with the participation numbers of men's NCAA wrestling from 1981-82 to current, and even a little bit before then. We're going to deal with how the roster cap limits on Division I will affect these numbers. So, as you can see on slide 2, it's kind of like our table of contents if you ever look at it. And as Jason always says, if you're driving and listening to the show, don't look at the numbers, okay? MatStats was here to create a library of statistical analysis for the NWCA. You hear that every show. Nothing's changed, okay? The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect any policies or opinions of the NWCA, nor do Gormley, Bryant, and Hazard always agree with each other. Okay.
Dot. That's slide 4 every show.
Yep. MatStats is based on numbers and stats and analyzation. It starts with facts and not opinions. Okay. Next, we now have, if you are under 60, which me and Kevin are not, but if you are under 60 like Jason is, there are more NCAA men's teams today than there were the year you graduated college. The last year we had more than 290 was 86, 87. Okay.
Can I say something real quick there about the 290? I know the Slippery Rock folks are so glad that, part of that 290. Welcome back, Slippery Rock. I mean, 3 national champions, Stan Zizik, Rod Irwin, Jack Spates, 2 of the biggest names in wrestling now have their college team back. So welcome back, guys.
And there's a Virginia tie to that because Freddie Powell coached at Slippery Rock for decades, and he's an old Granby guy. Teammates with Gray Simons, and lived in the neighborhood. So also a key proponent of those early episodes of the Gray Simons podcast that's still yet to be completed on my end for the Hall of Fame. But yes, the Rock is back. Because that was back. There were definitely puns aplenty with the newsletter there. Finally, wrestling has come back to The Rock, kind of playing off of the WWE. The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson was finally The Rock has come back to insert city name here. So had some fun with that. But The Rock is back. PSAC Division II, but it's back.
It's back. It's good to have a team.
2 more All-Americans from Virginia there. Mike Waller and Steve Perdue, both stalwart Virginia boys and All-Americans.
Steve Perdue, he's an Oscar Smith guy, right? Him and Terry's brother.
Yep.
And Waller was an Annandale guy.
I'm going to give you a few updates on what MatStats talked about in the 3-part series. On a clear day, you can see college athletics. Okay. We talked about the possibility of private equity, and it looks like that's a real possibility in the Big Ten. Michigan and USC are not too excited about that. Will they leave the conference? Who knows what's going to happen? Okay. Power 4 football coaches being fired with huge buyouts. This will be seen in the school's bottom line. Penn State, who has the best wrestling team, for the past many years, has been looking for a coach for more than 7 weeks now. This cannot help Penn State. This cannot help wrestling. There's 6 SEC schools that will have a new football coach next year. It's how do you like football playoff expansion now, people?
The problem with college. Side tangent about college football because I know Glenn loves when I go on my tangents. This is one that makes, as a sports fan who got into wrestling, again, I say sports fan, I was a junkie until I discovered wrestling when I was 15. Then I became kind of a wrestling guy. And so that's over 30 years. So I had a background and worked in sports departments. I worked in college sports, more than just wrestling, since I was a teenager. That being said, I watched the FCS playoffs this weekend. I watched the Division II playoffs. I watched 4 simultaneous streams of Division III playoff football with snow covering the field. It was magical. It's what I love about college sports is the playoffs. Why can the largest and smartest segment of college football not figure out what the NAIA, what the junior colleges, what Division II, Division III, and the subdivision or FCS, football championship subdivision, can figure out? It's simple. Oh, lost class time. They're losing class time. Oh, the bowls. The bowls are a made-up concept, okay? Shut up with the bowls. Your it's better for college sports if you do what Division II, Division III, and the FCS are doing with your playoff system. This college football playoff, it's just paying people that don't need to be paid to make decisions that have already been made in other divisions. The blueprint is there. Follow the blueprint, people. End of rant.
Okay, thank you for that rant, Jason. It's always nice early in the morning to have a rant from Jason Bryant.
We are recording this early too. This is we typically record in the afternoon. I just shoveled my driveway. Put my youngest kid on the bus, shoveled the driveway, came in, helped Glenn with old issues, and then we recorded the show. So yeah, it's fired up. I'm only on my first cup, and I'm going to be out of coffee in the next 2 minutes. Anyway, sorry, Glenn.
Okay.
We are 20 minutes in. We haven't even gotten through slide 7.
Yeah. Okay. And we're going to skip the right. Yeah. Okay. So, guys, I want to give a shout out to Kelly Powell. She gets a shout out several times a year now. She ran New York City in 3:36 and 8:14 pace. I mean, it's pretty impressive. She's the only one. Clearly, she won the William Mary Wrestler since she's a female, but she's the only one in our family of wrestlers that's doing anything. Okay. Athletically. Okay.
All right, so we've gone off on a couple of, I think, good tangents, but now we're going to talk about...
They're relevant, Kevin. They're relevant.
So what are we going to talk about this month? And why is it titled, Don't Stop Believing?
Okay, it is about the participation numbers in men's NCAA wrestling. Okay, the reason it's called Don't Stop Believing is because I've been one that's been saying for years the participation numbers are going to grow and they're going to set records. But now with this roster cap, it is really throwing a screwball at us. So I don't want people to stop believing that we can still grow this sport.
All right, so we've got roster caps, but now this is the time of the year that we get excited about sports sponsorships, participation report. How about let's tell the viewers the good news that you just relayed to the MatStats team and to the NWCA?
Yes. In 24-25, in other words, the past season, there was 9,056 men's NCAA wrestlers. This is the most at any time since 81-82. And before then, we didn't have reliable numbers being taken. There was one time when there was more than that. Okay. Now, just so you guys know where I got this from, the NCAA puts out a participation and rates report every year, and I live for that to come out in September, October when it comes out. And they do say in this, okay, between 56 and 57 and 81-82, participation rates were collected in 5 years intervals. And that is not the same data that's collected from 82 to the present. There are some of these people are in recreational programs. Therefore, these data are not directly comparable to other data. So you really have to draw a line in the sand and say anything before 81-82, we don't really know completely about it. Okay? Now, I have been saying that this is the Camelot days of wrestling, and I believe it really is. It is possible that there's at least 1 year prior to 81-82, we had more wrestlers, but we don't know how many were in recreational programs. So it's really hard to say. So people that are older than me, in other words, Kevin Hazard, okay, if they mention these numbers they're saying, okay, you don't know where they're coming from. So we really should be happy with what's going on now. Okay. We don't know with 100% certainty that last year was the most ever, but we don't know it's not. Okay. As far as Division I is concerned, the top 5 participation years of Division I were way back in the 80s. Okay. Division I is an arbitrary line, guys, for wrestling talent. There's some old-time skeptics, people my age and stuff, that point to the stat that the glory years of NCAA wrestling was back in the good old days. Okay, this is not a function of there being better quality wrestling back then. It's a function that there are more Division II teams and less Division I teams now. Okay? Many people that wrestle Division I, me included, in the 80s, would be Division II wrestlers today. That doesn't make me any better, any worse of a wrestler. It's just the way the Division I doesn't have as many teams as it used to be. When you go to Division II, the 5 largest years for participation numbers are the 5 most recent years. So you can start to see what I'm saying, guys. There's more Division II teams. With Division III, the top 4 years are the 4 most recent years. So you understand what's going on here. Next slide.
Okay, so looking at those stats, our growth is coming from D2 and D3. That's really, highest number of wrestlers, great news, 24-25. How about, can we now look at those numbers in graph form?
Certainly, Kevin. I call this the Hazard graphs because Kevin was the one that talked to me to having more graphs on the show for the average person to digest it better. And of course, don't look at this if you're driving. Okay. So the first slide there, and I try to put them in different colors depending on the division. This dark blue, whatever color you want to call that, is the number of men's D1 wrestlers. You can see it jump up a little bit from 82 and then go down. And the next graph will be Division II, and you can see that really coming up recently this century. Division III has grown this century also. And then slide 24 in the dark red shows the total of all NCAA wrestlers. Okay, and you can see it peaking in the most recent year.
Yeah, Glenn, that last line, that's the one that eclipsed 9,000. We don't see anything before that in the last 40 years.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Facts.
Yeah. Facts.
Interesting. Facts. Yep. Not opinions. Facts.
Our D3 has the most wrestlers and roster sizes. When did D3 come to the division with the most NCAA male wrestlers? And if there are fewer men's teams now, why do we have more wrestlers?
Okay. To answer your first question first, Kevin, Mike Moyer and the NWCA have done a wonderful job in adding teams. Okay. But the vast majority, predominantly all these teams, are Division II, Division III, NAIA, and women. Okay? So since 2013, D3 is the division with the most men's wrestlers. And you can see that on the chart there. The blue line, once again, is D1, green is D3, and the orange is D2. Okay? So D3 eclipsed that and has been the most now for the last 13 years. All right? The size of the rosters has what's really changed this. The men's D1 rosters are, last year, these numbers are taken out, 35.42. And you can see where it's grown from 81, 82, but not vastly or anything. It's been a slow, gradual growth. Okay? Division II, you can see that, of course, there's some spikes and ups and downs, but you can see it's generally going up. Division III, okay, the roster size has really grown, okay? And then all in all, you can see the purple is all the divisions, okay? You can see it growing. Now, there are some small anomalies. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, there are anomalies in the past roster sizes. Do we know why we have these anomalies, and are any of the past anomalies reason for concern in the future?
Okay, there's 5 spikes or drops in the roster sizes across the 3 divisions since 81, 82. There's a D1 spike from 82 to 83 in the roster sizes. There's a D3 spike, 86, 87, then it drops again. A D2 spike at 82 in 2002 to 03, and then it drops in 04. and a D1 drop from 22 to 23 and then back up in 24. Then there is an NCAA drop in 21, then back up in 22. The top 4 of these guys, we don't know what the real reason is. And you certainly can't go back to 81, 82 and ask anybody that worked for the NCAA that kept these numbers, or somebody like me who was wrestling then and coaching in those days. I don't know why this happened. I don't think there's anything we can learn from them. I'll use an example of Kelly Powell. She ran the 3:36 marathon at an 8:14 pace. Not all 26.2 miles were at an 8:14 pace. Of course, we know sometimes if there's up or down in hills, that would be a reason. Like going over, the Verrazano with the biggest hill in the thing would be a reason the first mile would be slow. So, guys, the way numbers works, you have fluctuations, okay? Like, for example, one of the biggest fluctuations I always give in spikes and stuff like that in streaks is if you run Joe DiMaggio on a computer 1,000 years, he will never hit in 56 straight games. But he sure as hell did it in 1941. Okay, these things happen. There's really no reason for us to draw anything from it. The last anomaly is from the COVID situation. You can see why that happened. It makes sense. Sorry that COVID ever happened, but it's long gone, so that's gone. Okay.
All right. The wisdom to know the difference is that now we're talking about the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Exactly.
How about giving us an example of accepting these things we can't change?
And to be clear, this is the Serenity Prayer, not the George Costanza Serenity Now. Completely different scenario. Completely different.
Okay. Okay, guys, a perfect example of this is NCAA men's D1 wrestling caps are real. We cannot change this, guys. Okay. As we learned in episode 46 in August 27th of this year, on a clear day, you can see college athletics. There are now a roster cap in men's NCAA wrestling of 30 wrestlers for any school that opted into the House settlement. In Gorm's opinion, this is buffoonery and will hurt college athletics. And I can say this, that I don't know of anybody in college wrestling that disagrees with me saying the hell with this roster cap idea. Okay.
Well, Glenn, there's also situations where even before the House settlement, we've got schools that have put in roster cap, and they've been doing roster management as a gender equity, whatever you want to call it, buffoonery. There's Division I schools that I'm not going to name who they are, since this may have changed since the last time I heard, that are looking at roster caps of 22, 23 wrestlers. Whereas, and I'm gonna, I don't borrow a lot of Mike Moyer-isms on a daily basis. I keep my hips low, my elbows in, it's 80 degrees in the shade. I don't use those unless he's on the phone with me. But I will say this, he does make a good point. With wrestling, we are not a sport that you look at a roster and be like, okay, in hockey, I work in college hockey, you can take somebody who used to be a defenseman and put him on a wing. Football, you can take a wideout and make him a tight end. You can take an offensive lineman, make him a defensive lineman. You can change positions and personnel, a safety to a cornerback, those type of things. You cannot take your 74-pounder and make him a 33-pounder unless you have a chainsaw. It's not functional for certain sports, and I really wish the oversight, and again, we've got 91 championship sports to look at, so you do have to apply some type of blanket system to make things in that regard. But setting a roster cap under 30, first of all, by some of these schools is irresponsible, and it shows you don't care about the student athletes you bring in. Yes, I'm going to say that. I don't think you care about that particular sport if you are limiting a wrestling program to, say, 22 athletes, because you know what? That means if two guys get hurt, you are less than a backup per weight. And this is a combat sport, okay? You're going to have guys get hurt. Yeah, it's part of what happens. I mean, college football rosters are over 100. You play 11 on a play. That's 10 times the amount you need for a single play. So again, we're not football. We got to stop comparing it. But at the same point, a roster cap under 30, you could probably get away with 27, 28, maybe. But if you got a string of guys that are hurt, and then with the portal, that's flexibility there too. So I really have a problem with the roster cap that if it's under 30 anywhere. That's independent of the House settlement, though.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Now, just to refresh everyone's memory, the D1 roster size last year was 35.42, almost 35.5, and the cap is 30. And to refresh some people's memory, or if you haven't seen the previous shows on the 3-part series on a clear day, you can see college athletics. I have no clue where they got the number 30 from. I think some lawyer bamboozled Judge Wilkin.
Threw a dart.
Yeah, and threw a dart, and it's just an even round number. So, yeah.
Don't know if I can hit it from here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes! The roster cap is now 16.
Yep.
That's what I hit, by the way. Sorry,
now,
guys.
Can we offset the loss in D1 numbers with growth in D2 or D3? Yes, we can, guys. But part of this is we have to get to a lot of people. There's an impression that all college wrestlers are equal, but D1 wrestlers are more equal than others. Okay. So we need to understand that the sport needs to grow in the whole, not just Division I. It's horrible that they're doing this to the roster caps in D1. But if these people move to D2 or D3, they still get to do it. Now, do they want to transfer schools, or they have to move to a different part of the country? In-state tuition might be cheaper for them, all that stuff. There's definitely not everyone just going to up and leave. Okay. But there's nothing wrong with being a D2, D3, NAIA, NCAA, man, woman, whatever wrestler. The sport is big on everything. Okay.
I'd like to say something real quick there. My son Brian was a coach for decades, and I noticed over the past 10 years of his coaching, he had more of his good kids going D2. They went to where they could participate. And I think that D2 is much better and D3 is much better. It's better run than it used to be. I'm agreeing with you. I think we have to focus on wrestling as a whole, not just D1.
Correct, Kevin. Now, guys, the next slide, I'm going to give you some bad news. We will see a decrease in the number of men's NCAA D1 wrestlers from 24-25 to 25-26. There's no way around that, guys. Wrestlers will be cut from D1 teams. And it's going now. Some people might still be grandfathered in for a couple years or stuff like that. So it might take a while to do it. But I'm going to put this in perspective for you, because as you can see on slide 40. If we use the 55 schools that opted in to the House settlement, and if you multiply that by 5.42, the reason I got that number, subtract 35.52 from 30, okay, that's 298. That is over 10% of all men's D1 wrestlers right now. All right? So what you're talking about here, guys, is we're talking about somewhere between 8 and 10, depending on whether you use the 35 as the roster or the 30 as the roster. You're talking about 8 to 10 men's NCAA D1 teams being dropped, essentially. Okay? Now,
what we could do, hopefully, though, is take if they now in a perfect world, be like, well, there's 298. That's with a roster cap. That's 10 more Division I teams we could fill with.
Yes, Jason. Yes. Yes. Thank you.
But that would require logic. That would require logic, and
it's also harder to add D1 teams as D2 teams. Now, guys, for some reason, and I'll use the airplane example here. When we drop a team, everyone hears about that. When we're cutting 298, we don't really take so much to it, just like the plane crash is on the news every day, okay, the car accidents aren't, and it's the same thing. We're losing people here. Okay. So it is bad news if we're losing 298 wrestlers. Okay. Now, as far as Judge Claudia Wilkin, I don't know the lady. Okay. I don't know if she was just trying to get out of it easily. She was bamboozled, or she's not intelligent enough to realize what the roster cap would do. But as far as I'm concerned, she's on the same list in my mind as the athletic director at William Mary that dropped wrestling and that football coach at now Baton Rouge, okay, who are just causing trouble for sports.
Okay, back to where I think we're stopping believing. Maybe we shouldn't stop believing, but there are bad news for participation numbers. Is there any way D2 and D3 can help with this? Help when this dam breaks? And how many NCAA member schools are there, and can that help?
All right, Kevin. Yes, and Jason mentioned this earlier about adding 10 more D1 teams or any teams. Yeah, we need to look at D2, D3, and NAIA schools to add more teams, okay? Because that is where why do you fish there? That's where the fish are, okay? Why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. So it's the wisdom to know the difference that we can help get more teams with this. Okay.
And Glenn, this is to bring up too, since 2000, since I've been tracking it, 25 years I've been tracking 450 active new college programs. Now we've had some we've had some schools close and drop, but since the turn of the century, there's 450 more programs added at the varsity level, and that's junior college, that's NAIA, that's men, that's women. So the growth is happening now, and again, it ebbs and flows. Like I'm learning through the history back in the 70s and 80s when I'm digging through these add and drops. Like, there was a rush where there were junior colleges left and right that had wrestling, and then they consolidated, they closed, they stopped it. They did it for 2 years ago. Oh, this is just not what we thought. Personnel changes, sometimes it's a coach. Harold Nichols, for example, back in the 50s, brought wrestling to Arkansas State. Then when he got hired at Iowa State, that program ceased to exist down in Arkansas until we had Little Rock, 50 years later. So, there's you took point, there's ebbs and flows, but we always need to make sure, no, we are providing opportunities. There are opportunities. It's not just like everything's gone, it's never coming back. It just may not be, as to Glenn's point, where we want them always to come back. We want 150 Division I schools. But are we better with that? Or, those are all philosophical questions. I'm not going to sit here and say which one's better. I've made a point in the past that a strong NAIA program, for example, with 50 guys on their roster is better than a life support Division I team that gets one guy to the tournament every decade. So, we're Division I. Well, you couldn't beat D3 teams. So let's, we've had programs we've lost like that. But to the point, we've added 450. The reason I say that is Mike called me about that 2 days ago, and that was the number I looked at. Since 2,450 new programs are on board.
Yeah, that's remarkable. And if you look at it, most of these schools are adding enrollment-driven issues. And if I'm president of school, AD, and want to start a team, and I said, wait a minute, there's going to be 298 less wrestlers in Division I. I'm a Division II guy or Division I guy. I want to start a sport to get 30 men and 30 women at the school. Wrestling's right there. All right, now, moving on. Since 81, 82, on all the years that we've known, Division III has always had the most teams, guys. It's just the way it is. Okay. And Division II looks like it's going to pass Division I. Hopefully not with Division I losing teams, with Division II gaining teams here soon. Okay. And you can see on the chart on 46 a rebound in the number of teams where it went down, and now it's coming back up, which is nice to see. As far as Kevin Hazard's question there, in case Jason and I went on so long, people forgot what his question was. It was the number of NCAA member schools. What that means is, for example, Notre Dame is a member school at the NCAA. Maryville College down the road from me, a Division III school, is a member school. They're both equal in that thing. They're both one school, one school. Okay. A member school means how many schools there are in the NCAA. It has grown from 753 in 81-82 to 1,085 last year. That's a 44% increase. Okay. So there's more fish out there to look at to get teams. Okay. And as you can see in the next slide, okay, 76% of this member growth is from Division II and Division III schools. So there's a reason that Mike Moyer, the NWCA, is getting more D2 and D3 schools to add because, first of all, there's more of them. Okay?
All right. Why don't we do a show about this? And it's a great topic for our next show. And any way we can do one focusing on what we can do to help grow the sport in different ways. Don't stop believing.
Thank you, Kevin. As a matter of fact, Dr. Eddie McLaughlin texted me a couple weeks ago about a suggestion for a show after he watched the duels in Tulsa. So, yes, we will do a show on this, figuring out how to help the sport despite the legal ramifications of the House settlement to bring on roster cap limits. And it's a horrible thing for the sport, guys. I know I've been positive and gung-ho on almost every show recently, but we have to fight this. And we're not going to overturn it legally. We got to figure out how to get kids to be able to wrestle despite the House settlement. All right, Kev, let's hear about your Kev notes.
Okay, let's kind of review where we were. Number one, we are already seeing the fallout from the House versus NCAA settlement in football coaches' firings, in the turmoil in the Big Ten. That was on slide 49.7. There are now more wrestlers than in any previous year that use reliable numbers. Number three, almost all the growth of NCAA male wrestlers has come from D2 and D3, and this trend will continue. D3 has had the most NCAA male programs since 1982 and the most wrestlers since 2013. Number five, capping D1 wrestlers at 30 is going to have a huge effect on the number of D1 wrestlers. It's going to be the equivalent of dropping 8 to 10 D1 teams. Number six, our focus really needs to widen to include D2 and D3 when we're thinking about NCAA college wrestling. Number seven, we also need to include women's teams, NAIA, and NCAA teams when we think about college wrestling, not just D1. Number eight, we saw some really nice charts, and those charts showed the trends in the number of teams and wrestlers between the different NCAA divisions. 9, looking at the trends, it's evident that D1 will surpass D1 with the number of wrestlers, and this will happen sooner due to the roster caps in D1 and in the number of teams. And number 10, even with all the turmoil, NCAA member schools have increased by 44% since 1982, from 758 to 1,085 teams or schools.
Okay, thank you for that, Kevin and Jason. The next episode, we'll explore not what wrestling could do for you, but what you could do for wrestling. Okay? And we're going to try to figure out how MatStats, using some numbers, can try to educate the viewers and say what we can do to help specifically the roster cap thing that we just talked about. So, till next month, same Matt channel, same Matt time. On behalf of my co-hosts Kevin Hazard and Jason Bryant, I'm Glenn Gormley signing off.